Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Everyone, peace, God's mercy, and God's blessings upon all of you. Welcome to today's episode of the Strange Ink Show, Woke Writers, meaning conscious writers. We really hope that you enjoy today's episode, which is going to be all about flow. This idea of being in the flow. I don't know if you've heard this quite often in the self-help world. It goes around so much about all the things that we can do to get into flow. So I thought it would be interesting just to visit this topic and just talk a little bit about it as Muslim women and as writers. So I really, really hope that you enjoy this, inshallah. Bismillah. So flow, right? What is flow? When the word comes to mind, is this idea of being in a place where time almost feels like it doesn't exist, right? Almost, because time does exist, but just feeling like as if time is just it's not the first thing on your mind. You are doing a project, for example, and you are just so into it, right? It's like as if it just comes naturally. It almost comes as naturally as breathing, right? Or as walking. And these things are so, it makes you want to keep doing it as well. So what I'm going to be talking a little bit about here, inshallah, is based on a book called Flow. I'm going to get the author's name, inshallah, I promise, and I'll put it in the caption. I have a trouble pronouncing his name, but it was a New York best time seller, and he talks about the psychology of flow, and the things that he describes, and I would recommend you highly to read this book for yourself. There are some things which I found a little bit hard to feel comfortable with at the very least. Just his idea of organized religion, so just keep an eye out for things like that. It's important that when we read critically, and this is one of them cases. But there was some great information that he gave in some of this as well, and he described this concept of flow and how to achieve it. So I'll give you 3 things, inshallah, that you can go away with this idea of flow and finding the flow in our writing. And flow, like I said, is that feeling of naturalness, is the feeling of almost like I am meant to do this, right? This is me living my purpose in the best way possible, and everything else is it doesn't matter right now, because I'm here right now is the feeling of being present at the very, very most. So this feeling of flow, how we can achieve it is through different ways, but there has to be certain components present in order for us to fully experience this experience of flow, right? One of the ways is attention. The second one is through something challenging with that same activity that you're doing, and the third way is through having achievable goals. And like I said, there is more to this. I am simplifying it to the T, and like I said, please read on as well, and read this information for yourself as well. So the first thing, attention. Now there's this idea that goes around, and it's like whatever you pay attention to, it grows, right? But with this idea, it's about paying attention, and I'll give you the example of a surgeon. So a person who is a surgeon, they are in an atmosphere when they are doing this surgery of being very, very focused, and it's almost like as if they are in a stage, right? They're on a stage, they are in a room where it's full of lights, they are focused, and everything around that place is to bring attention to that one thing that they are trying to do in regard to their surgery. And that is and they say that people who are surgeons have the highest recordings of being in this feeling of flow, because they have maximum attention to something, right? And then the second component is attention. The first one is attention. Second component is challenging. So whatever they are doing is extremely challenging. I mean, open heart surgery, right? It's like very, very, very difficult for anyone, any layperson to do, and it's something that is very challenging. But especially if they change it up, the kind of surgery that they do as well. And the third thing is having a goal, having a measurable goal. So for a surgeon, I'm using the example of a surgeon, but I will bring this back to writing as well. But for a surgeon, their goal is to maybe close up the operation, the surgery in a way which is effective, where they have completed their thing. Maybe they have done a heart transplant, maybe they have done a heart surgery on something else. Oh, I'm so illiterate in this capacity, but you get the idea, right? So these three components, let's bring it to writing, right? A lot of the time you will find writers who are prolific writers who have been writing for such a long time to kind of change up their styles a little bit, and sometimes they'll even change up their names, right? They'll have something called a pen name, which is like an alias almost. And the reason why they do this most of the time is because writing something different to what they might have been known for writing it's a new experience, right? It's so hard to pay attention to something that you already know how to do. You do it, and then you're used to doing it, and then it's no longer challenging, which is a second component. And then you no longer enjoy the process because you don't find it challenging enough, so you try something new. And so with writing, it's important to make sure the attention piece is there. Let's just go step by step. I'm running ahead of myself right now. Let's just make sure that the attention piece is there. So how we can do that is by creating habits around our writing. Now, I know that there's this like romanticized version of being able to write wherever we are. And that is something that I did myself when I was on the subway, for example, during pandemic, and I was 6 months pregnant, and I had a 6-month-year-old at the same time, and it was just so difficult to find the time to write because I'm going to this social work internship, and it's COVID, and there were so many things. So the only time that I would find to write would be on that subway train, back and forth on a Tuesday and a Friday. I remember the days, subhanallah, because those days I would look so forward to them, just being on the subway for that 1 hour ride and just opening up my book and just my phone and just typing, I wrote a whole first draft. So it's the idea of finding the space to write, but at that time that was the only place I could write. It was almost kind of like a survival mode, right? So I would highly recommend for you, the writer, the Muslim woman writer, to find a space, and really any writer, to find a space where they feel like as if their writing space is guarded, and in a way where you can pay full attention to what you are doing. Now, timing is everything when it comes to writing. For me, the best time to write, inshallah, and I do plan to do a podcast on this as well, a podcast episode on this, is the morning. And there's numerous reasons for this. One of them is it's just there's the Islamic idea as well, not the idea but the Islamic advice, which is always the best advice about there being so many blessings in the morning. But there is also another aspect, another dimension to this, that in the morning, especially if you're the kind of person who gets highly energized, or has small children, or has a lot of things to do during the day, where you're exhausted by the end of the day, and you will absolutely not find time to write. The morning is like gold at that time after Fajr. And I know Fajr keeps changing, but it's such a good time to bring our attention to the writing, because there's a lack of noise there, and then you can build habits towards it as well. It doesn't have to be every day, maybe 1 day, 2 days a week, but during that time that you're writing. And I'm very careful to say habits instead of rituals, because rituals can almost become religious, and we want to kind of steer away from that idea of, I have a ritual of lighting up my candle and that is my almost good luck, right? because it's all about intention, especially as a woke writer, especially as a conscious writer. So you'll build up habits though, and these habits are things which guard your writing, and they build your attention during that time that you're writing. You're training your mind to do this, right? And then that's the attention piece. Now the second piece is, right, say you've been writing something, the same thing over and over and over again. So for me, for example, I wrote poetry for years, and I still do write poetry, but I wrote it for years and years and years. And then it got to a stage where I just felt like, okay, my poetry was changing, but there was something that I just wasn't feeling anymore, and I didn't really understand why, but I think it was the aspect of the challenge, right? The challenge wasn't there for me anymore, at least in that regard, or at least I didn't have the interest of pursuing a more challenging route of writing poetry. So what I did was, my sister Kashmir Miriam, she brought this idea, and she said to me during the pandemic, she was like, because the emotions were so high during that time, there was such this like feeling of life and death, and it was just a really difficult time. But she even told me before that, and she said, you should write a book. And I thought, okay, a poetry book, right? But then as I began to think about it, I was like, well, this story keeps coming to my mind, and what would happen if I maybe wrote about it? Maybe I brainstormed the idea, and maybe I just kind of played with the idea a little bit. And that is where the first draft came from during my travels of the pandemic to my internship, because what brought me to it, and you can even argue that there was the attention piece there as well, because I didn't have my baby daughter screaming for my attention. Everyone is kind of doing their own thing on the subway. I have my own seat. I would always go into the corner of the subway, like as far away from people as possible, which is pretty impossible when you're on a New York subway in the morning and everyone's going to work, but I tried. And sometimes I managed to just find that attention within the work, just in the midst of people, because everyone's attention was elsewhere, and mine was on my writing. So it was survival mode, but there was this piece of attention as well that I was putting on it. SubhanAllah, just back then as well, I remember just writing and walking and writing, and sometimes I wouldn't even see where I was going because I was so into the writing. My attention was on the writing, because it was this new challenge. It was this new intrigue. It was this new excitement towards this piece that I was writing, which was so different to everything that I'd written before, a novel of all things, right? Which I am still writing right now. I'm on the 7th draft right now. And inshallah, bismillah, I'll finish it soon and share it with you. But what I loved about that was the challenge of doing it. So there's the attention piece, building a habit around your writing, doing it at a time where you're least likely to be distracted and affected. We have actually a community called the Writer's Block, where we do silent writing sessions, where we build our attention together in being present in a space at a certain time during the month, where all distractions are muted or pushed away, and we just spend that time writing and paying attention to our own work and not really speaking. So that's what we do in Strange Ink. If you can definitely find out more information about that at www.strangeincorporated.org, the Writer's Block, check it out. But that's another way of building attention. And then there is the challenging aspect as well. So you have to have a challenge. If you're not finding your story appealing anymore, maybe there's a part of it which is not being delved into, your memoir, your self-help book, and maybe it's something that you're so used to, right? And bring the challenge back into your writing. And finally, another crucial part of reaching this state of flow is having a goal, is having a measurable goal, right? Like that surgeon, his measurable goal was to have the heart inside of the body, and then everything kind of like put back together, and that was his goal, right? In the most simplified Aishah way possible of describing that experience. But we as writers can also create measurable goals. We can create goals which are attainable, goals which are within reach but not so high that you you miss it. So it's about creating goals and change incrementally, and that creates discipline as well. So a measurable goal, for example, would be, I know a lot of writers, they say, I want to write 1,000 words every day. For some writers that is very possible, but for other writers like myself, that is not possible, because mostly when I'm writing early drafts, I'm a very kind of intuitive, inspired, driven writer, and the inspiration does not come all in one go every single day, and I don't, like, the words just won't come out sometimes, because and it's very hard to hit that 1,000 without feeling like I just wrote a load of like not very good writing in the nicest way possible. So it's important to have those measurable goals, which are challenging, but not so challenging that you are unable to achieve them. So for example, a very measurable goal might be, I would just want to wake up. If you don't have any writing space for you right now, you can kind of combine all these things. Like, I want to wake up once a week at Fajr and I want to write for 1 hour. That is it. That's a goal. And then you do that, and then you can keep doing that for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then maybe then the month after you can say, I want to wake up 2 days a week, and then you keep doing that. And then the month after, I want to wake up 3 days a week at Fajr, and then you just keep going like that, and then building and building and building. And it really does happen in small increments, and that's so important for your goals as well, to be measurable, and in small increments. And even if you are moving slowly forward toward them, you are still moving, right? And that is why I have no shame in saying that I am on my 7th draft of my novel, which I have been writing since before my 4-year-old was born. But I also have another book coming out, which I wrote in the meantime between those drafts. So there is so many ways that you can do things, and it's so important to do what is right for you, and do what is something that will keep your attention, which is challenging, and something that you can measure in measurable goals. I know that was a lot of information, and we are going to actually start doing blog posts, if we haven't already started doing it by the time this episode is released. But we really want to make sure that there are as many resources for you as possible to make use of this information, because writing is important. Writing consciously is even more important, and having the tools to write is the thing which makes that happen, right? And this is what this is. So I pray that you can reach that state of flow in a way of excellence, not perfection, because we will never be perfect, but in a way of reaching excellence, and you do it in a way which is authentic to your most best self, right? And may Allah put so many blessings in your words. Ameen. Thank you for being here with me today. Have a beautiful and blessed day. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace, everyone. Oh, before we finish, I almost forgot. Let's put our hands on our hearts and let's say this together. A beautiful affirmation, which is, my voice has power. My voice has power.